The Raptures of the Deep. How I used to enjoy the shimmer of light on water. Now I look out and notice from there that the terrors that beset us have come. Worms walk on the land, and blind white crabs skittle and scuttle and munch and slide under doorways and ride elevators to penthouse suites and adapt to underground tunnels and eat and eat and eat everything they find. Crustal plates collide. Earth quakes and people have cell phones and call from the fallen houses, the village deserted, all around them fled. The giant squid came from a trawl 1,000 meters down the Monas Trench. They showed it on TV, flipped off the edge of the dissection slab, eyes glazed, tentacles akimbo. An intelligent species, they said, its neural system intricate and mysterious. Tasted good, stir-fried with garlic and ginger, at least the parts that didn't turn to mush on the haul up from the pressures of the deep. Curious pads on the tentacular tips. The camera zoomed to close-up. Pads too tough for stir-fry. The sea crept farther up onto the land. Worms island-hopped, crossing species from fish to pigs to human, the way these things do, from Manus to the islands strung out along the coast, one by one, till they reached Moresby, Brisbane, London, Paris, Rome. It was my job to fit stuff like this together into a pattern. I looked at things you won't find in the formal system of zoology. If I say Bigfoot, you get the lunatic end of the spectrum. But giant squid, oarfish that bask on the surface of the water, monster turtles that walk upon the beaches, that was my scene. Cryptozoology. That was how I found myself in a submersible a couple k's under the sea down the Manus Trench. Scott drove. I observed. Worked with Scott before, down the Paul Ridge with the NASA nuclear program. Bad news, that. Dump radioactive waste down a hydrothermal vent. See where it gets you. I've been with Scott enough times to cope with fear of the submersible, fear of being crushed to death in the deep. I had faith in the vehicle and the equipment. What if it failed? Death would come swiftly. The prospect of a swift death if things go wrong, I could handle that. I was not afraid of my own personal death. I discovered there are things worse than the death of the individual. It was on that dive I began to know it. After Paul, Scott took off and went to work for TriStar, mined deep under the sea, 2 kilometers near the hydrothermal vents. Brought up gold, copper, and silver. Other stuff as well. Squid, fish, worms, mussels, crabs, stuff that exploded on the way to the surface, so that gold came mixed with the shredded flesh of rare and wondrous deep-sea creatures. There had been trouble at TriStar. As we sank under the sea, Scott filled me in. That squid on TV? Get this. That squid was only the beginning. TV crew came on board. They wanted a squid. We got them a squid. I looked out into the dark around us. Nobody goes to all this trouble for a squid. I shivered. We were padded against the cold, but still it seeped through, getting colder and colder as we descended. Our headlights poked through gloom. I caught glimpses through dark, thick glass and readings on the sonar of creatures that came and went, registering as shadows in the glass on the screens of the panel of instruments. The trawl gear went down and the squid came up from 1,000 meters, right? That's only halfway to the bottom, halfway down to the vents on the ocean floor. At the vents, liquid rock and superheated steam surge from the Earth's core. There's a smell that bubbles to the surface around the TriStar mining ships, part bad eggs, part rotting fish. In my line of business, you soon develop peculiar tastes. At least they seem weird to others. Bella didn't like the person I became when I started work on the trawls. She soon took off. I didn't notice the slide from good to bad. I descended into weirdness without knowing it. Others couldn't or wouldn't get used to the weirdness that entered into me, wouldn't let me go back to whoever I once was, the bright-eyed boy straight out of ecology school, ready to take on the world and change it for the better. Deep down in the vents, life takes a sulfurous path. Sulfur feeds microbes. Microbes form mats. Worms grow in the mats. Fish eat worms. Blind white crabs eat everything. Dark ecosystems exist with dark thoughts, dark motives, dark desires. More to come, said Scott. Got some black smokers down there. You'd love them. Beauties. Name of satanic mills, Roman ruins. Black smokers form where black steam feeds the red-fronted tube worms. Crabs claw their way across smoking fumaroles. Okay, the trawl goes ahead. We'll get the squid and bring it up, but the net is weird, full of large holes. The net is tough stuff. Monofilament, sure, but thick. It just can't break, but it can burn. First I'd heard of it. Tore holes the size of houses. Looks like the mother of Jaws got there before us. Get this. They found stones tangled in the nets. The rocks shouldn't have been there. Ocean floor is 1,000 meters farther down. What are they doing halfway to the surface? And they were hot, burning hot to touch. My field, as I said, is cryptozoology. I study the rare and wondrous, the animals of folklore and personal testimony, not yet creatures of formal classification in zoology. I study the creatures of the deep that have washed up onto land. Here a half-rotten carcass, the distant sighting of a monster by a sailor exhausted by the night watch, deeply untrusting of the testimony of his senses. They call me when they do not know what it is they are encountering. It becomes necessary that they know in order to do the work of the day. I never knew about hot rocks until they hit me. They hit, and the submersible jutted to one side with a series of huge jolts to the metal shell. They came like asteroids pounding a spaceship. Scott moved fast, kept his eyes on the sonar, and dodged through breaks and the blips. He guided the sub like a spacer. I watched. I listened. I felt. The noise was deafening. Before the sea, it seemed empty, with few things out there to watch us watching them. Now, caught in the wildly swinging headlights, I could see what was hitting us. Rocks like the rocks Scott talked about. These rocks were covered in wildlife. Large red tube worms, giant mussels, white crabs skittering. The rocks hit the glass, and I could see the worms squelch up against the glass and disintegrate. I sensed the power of ancient forms of life that followed the path not taken by life that long ago had crawled up from the sea to colonize the land. I looked again at the sonar screen. It wasn't a random pattern of rocks on the screen. The rocks were on the move, but in the same direction. Scott saw it too, and swiftly steered us to one side out of the tumbling rocks. Looked like the rocks were heading south. There's been a bit of action in that direction down on the ocean floor. New vent opening. Scott pointed to the map. Rocks on the move. Worms moving south. I could hardly believe what he was saying, nor accept what I was seeing. A vent opens in the cold depths of the ocean. Soon red-fringed worms appear, and giant clams. New life arrives, mysteriously, across the cold, dark sea. Life that loves heat travels through deep cold. How's it going? I asked Scott. He was checking out the instruments. Want out of this? Still looking good, said Scott. Scott was skipper. We'll keep going. The sub dived and the rock belt vanished off the screens. Red eyes glinted at us. Red eyes floating in the sea. Millions of tiny red eyes. Mussels and worms floated free in the water. Huge worms writhing around the submersible, pressing against the glass, looking in. Worms don't have eyes. Red-eyed shrimps clustered in red fronds. Navigator shrimps. Shrimps with a sense of direction, showing worms where to go, what camera to slither over, what hatch to prise open, what human to head for, what gut to infect, what... I caught myself falling into panic and pulled back. Scott sat at the controls, frozen. I shook him. Worms don't have eyes, but they've worked out ways to see. There's something stirring out there. Scott was out to it. His eyes were open, but he did not move. We continued to sink, as if weighted by heavy stone. Scott passed out. He slumped over the control panels. I yelled at him and punched him and pushed him away from the controls, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. If I was in an auto on the highway, I'd reach over, try to take the wheel, try to pull the keys out, screech to a stop, anything to stop the vehicle moving. I did not know how to drive the sub. They've hit the oxygen supply, I thought, the rocks, the worms. They have done something to our air, and soon I shall pass out like Scott and never wake up. I am caught in the raptures of the deep. I am narked, like a diver whose bubbles and blood and brain bring on a swift descent into drunkenness. I'm going deeper and deeper into unknown places. The cold of the sea has entered my bones. The spirit of these dark places has entered my blood, and I am enraptured. From the lofty plateaus of my bubbling thoughts, I feel deep pity for Scott. His mind had caved into the darkness of unknowing. I sought out the other minds out there, minds that were open to me. I heard their call. I had the desire to go deeper, that exhilaration that cuts in sharply and rides the diver with the madness of the spirit, in which is entwined the intellectual desire to know, to go deeper and deeper forever. I must know the raptures of the deep, even if that knowledge kills. I looked out at the waving fronds of life and knew they were showing us what they could do. They were showing the way the human world will end. We will come to our natural end, just as the dinosaurs and the woolly mammoths. The submersible bobbed to the surface, rescued by the dead man's clutch. We came aloft and they said I had bad dreams down there, the lack of air and the damage to the controls. I wait here in my chalet high in the Alps and look at the world and see the links between this and that, hear the rise of the sea level. They are an infestation of intestinal worms. Weird life is coming on land, like it's migrating. It's coming to change our world. Change, when it happens, will be sharp and swift. What did I see? I saw a whole lot of wildlife where it shouldn't have been, doing things it shouldn't have known how to do. Sulfurous life with a kind of instinct, a talent for survival. All life has it. Witness the worms. The thoughts I have are dark and formless. They are on the march, and they're bringing their environment with them. The first colonists they send out will die, just as with the first Pacific voyagers who sailed out from their homes to distant lands. Some made it to New Zealand. Many others died along the way. They're bringing their home environment with them, as once the New Zealanders brought their trees, their dogs, their pigs. The dark world brings warm stones, clouds of sulfurous bacteria, shoals of mutating worms. That which is under the sea is coming out onto land. Life that glows with a sulfurous flame will rise up to terraform the earth. They will bring the earth back to where it once was, just as once oxygen-based life took over from those that preferred an atmosphere of methane. Once more the red fronds of the giant tube worms will waft in bubbles of volcanic gases at Yellowstone. The mats of sulfur-munching bacteria spread outward from mud springs to slide over and smother the green plants of the land. I came back from below knowing too much. Once we were fearful that spaceships would come from the sky with aliens. Now I know that, yes, they are sending their ships to Earth, but theirs are the ships that rise up from beneath. We were wrong to think they would come from the sky. They're all carnivores down there.